Hi everyone, my name is Kat, or for librarian, and in today's video I'm going to be sharing my wrap up for July and August. The reason I combine these two is because I only read one book in July, and that one was a novella. July wasn't a great reading month, so I'm going to combine the two. Throughout the rest of this video, I'll just say August. Because that's easier, but know that I mean July and August together. Like when I talk about my stats and stuff, and my book of the month is my book of the months. But a wrap up for only one book is a little sad. So let's start off with some stats. In the month of August, I read 8 books, good for a total of 3,943 pages. 2 of those books were in Dutch, 6 of those books were in English. I had 2 DNFs in August and 1 reread. In terms of genre, as usual, fantasy was my most read genre with 6 books, but I also read 1 contemporary and 1 literary fiction. In terms of rating, I already mentioned I had 2 DNFs. Outside of those, my month was pretty good. I had 3 4-star reads, 1 4.5-star, and 2 5 stars. So I've enjoyed everything that I finished. So let's get into the books. I'll start with my DNFs and then I go through the books I did finish, starting with my least favorite, working my way up to my most favorite book of the month. So the first book that I DNF'd was Idol by Louise O'Neill. This is a contemporary fiction about this influencer who she's really popular, and one day she tells the story of her sexual awakening with her best friend, but the best friend is like, that's not what happened, and so drama and issues ensue. I didn't get very far in this one. It just wasn't what I expected. I kind of wanted this like super self-absorbed, egocentric, privileged influencer who just is only concerned about her own issues and doesn't really care about all the rest. But it wasn't really what we got. The influencer was more like a spiritual guru who wants to inspire girls to be happy and stuff like that. And that just wasn't what I wanted from this. I wanted a very dislikable main character. And I felt like she was a little too likable in this for what I was looking for at the time. Also, the writing style didn't really jive with me. These sentences were so long, like it was almost ridiculous. And so yeah, I don't know, it didn't fully work for me. I didn't hate it. I get why people would like it, but it just wasn't what I was looking for at the time. So if it sounds interesting to you, definitely pick it up. The other book that I DNF'd was The Book That Wouldn't Burn by Mark Lawrence. This was a bummer. I even bought a physical copy. I gave it to a friend, so I don't have it anymore. But yeah, I really thought I would love it, but I didn't. I just thought it was way too long, and Mark Lawrence just used way too many words to describe things. So we have two main characters in this one. I forgot their names, but we have the one in the library. I didn't really care about his plot and about him. Um, and then you had the other one from the town. Um, and I liked her at first, but our plot line went in a direction that I didn't want it to go in. And while I see why it was necessary for the plot and why I can see why this decision was made, it just wasn't what I wanted. Um, and so yeah, I just didn't care. I think it's way too long. But other people have liked it, so it didn't work for me. But I can see why it could work for other people. But so I TNF'd this one as well. Then the books that I actually did start. The first one is part of the reason why I only finished one book in July, and that was because I spent the rest of July reading about half this, and that is The Priory of the Orange Tree, which is incredibly long. It's an epic fantasy standalone, even though there is now another book out set in the same world, but it's different characters, a different plot. So I like to treat them as two standalones instead of a series. I really enjoyed this. It was very compulsively readable, and I didn't want to put it down. If you don't know The Priory of the Orange Tree, it is there's two major plot lines, one in the east and one in the west. In the west, there is this kingdom, and we follow the queen of this kingdom and some people at court. And there is and 1,000 years ago, the world was attacked by worms that served the Nameless One. And then there was this hero who slayed the Nameless One. And there was a prophecy that as long as his bloodline would sit the throne of this kingdom, the Nameless One wouldn't be able to return. Which his bloodline has set throne for thousands of years. But there is a problem because now the queen isn't married, doesn't have any children, doesn't have an heir. There's also no other family because since the prophecy was made, everyone always had one child, and that's it. So this queen needs a kid because if she dies, then the Nameless One returns. In the east, we follow a girl who wants to become a dragon rider, but that a stranger turns up on her island and she helps him instead of reporting him. And if people find out about that, that'll be very that'll have consequences for her because you have to report strangers, not help them, because it could bring diseases to the island, which we don't want, of course. And in order to be a dragon rider, you can't, you have to have a clean record. So yeah, it was fun. The Western plotline is definitely more developed than the Eastern one. I really loved the Western one. I was very invested. I also realized because of this book that I really enjoy books set at court and the court politics that are involved with that. I really liked the characters as well. They're just very well written, especially the Western ones again. I love them so much. We have Sabrin, who is the queen, who wants the best for her people, and just gonna try everything to do good for her people. Um, and then there's Eid, who there's also this religious order called the Priory of the Orange Tree that she is part of, and she sort of has to balance that and then her personal feelings that she develops for Sabrin. Um, so yeah, and then we have Eid's friend Meg, who's just the sweetest, and her brother Lot, who's I love them all. They're great. I love these characters. Um, my favorite part, however, about this book was the religion. Um, there is virtuedom. That's what it's called, and they have like the virtues that knights would possess. Sort of turned that into a religion. But I love how there's two versions, and then we get to learn why these two versions exist and stuff like that. Um, I really, I really liked the religion element in this book. Um, I had one issue with it, and that was just I wish that this was a trilogy. Just the exact same story, but instead of just putting it in one book, just splitting it up into three separate ones, then we could have like then some pacing issues would be solved because that was a little weird at times. Then we could have developed the Eastern storyline a bit more. Because for a very long time it was sort of like, why is this here? Um, it felt like it didn't matter for a lot of the book. Um, and then also the ending, we could have spent more time there because it did feel a bit rushed. Um, so I think that like those issues would be solved if it would have been a series instead of a standalone. They didn't take away from my enjoyment, but I do wish that it was a trilogy. But I quite enjoyed this. I gave this book 4 stars. Um, so I do recommend. Next, I had a reread, which is The Lost Hero by Rick Riordan. Um, Actually, last year it was my goal to reread the entire Percy Jackson series and the entire Heroes of Olympus series, to be able to read the Trials of Apollo, but that didn't happen. I read like half of Percy Jackson last year and then I stopped. And then this year I finished my reread of the Percy Jackson series, and then now I started my reread of the Heroes of Olympus series. Um, so yeah, I really loved the series when I read it the first time. I loved it again when I read it this time. Of course, an important element to Rick Riordan's books are the humor that he uses. While some things aren't really funny anymore when you're an adult, other things stayed great. I especially liked how these half-bloods represent their godparent. I like the creative ways were really fun. Um, and sometimes funny, like you had Clovis, who is the son of Hypnos, the god of sleep, and he like starts a sentence and falls asleep in the middle of it. And it's just it was stuff like that that I just really enjoyed. Also, just the characters are very well written in this, and that especially shows because it is multi POV. The POVs feel very distinct. I also liked that Rick Riordan really tried his best to put more diversity in the books, but he didn't do so in a way that felt forced. It feels like it's naturally woven into the series. Um, so that I really enjoyed. There's one character that really jumped out for me on this reread, and that is Leo. Um, while annoying at places, I just had so much empathy for him because he has had such a tough life, and he just he deserves the best. And I no, I just want him to be happy. Because I love him so much. Um, so yeah, I really enjoyed this. Um, it was a delight to reread it. And some great nostalgia as well. Then I read The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie, which is the first book in the First Law trilogy. Everyone always says that this book is all characters and no plot, and I partially agree, but not entirely. Um, it is true that there is no clear progression from A to B, but it's not like nothing happens in this book. Like, a lot happens. Um, Even if the pacing feels slow at times, but it is really character driven. I do agree with that. They're definitely the focus of the story. And I'm gonna be basic, and I'm gonna say that I love Glokta, even though I shouldn't. Um, he's just, oh, I just want him to be happy, and there is one conversation with him and Major West that may be my favorite scene in the entire book, and I just feel for him, and I want him to be happy, but I don't know if that will happen. Sad. It was also Logan. It took me a little time to warm up to him. His chapters were a little bit of a snooze fest in the beginning. Um, but as the book went on, I started to like him more, and he's also just adorable at times. And I like him. I love him. There is one thing about him at the end, like a certain reveal or something that kind of came out of nowhere, and I don't know if I'm really happy with it. We'll see how important it is in the rest of the series, and if it maybe it'll be cool in the rest of the series. I don't know. And there's also Chazal. Everyone hates Chazal, and while I definitely understand why, I also think that Abercrombie did a great job showing um why he is the way that he is. Um, and so that he's just a product of his upbringing. I love Artie. She's the best. And I love her relationship with Chazal. Another criticism that I have is the world building. It is incredibly minimal, um, which sort of makes the world feel very small. Um, and I also don't really have a sense of how different places um, connect to one another, um, and just how they relate to one another. And even like a map maybe could have helped with that, which also wasn't in, at least not in the copy that I have. Maybe there's maps in other editions. I don't know. But yeah, that was a little. I didn't. I think the world building is a little underdeveloped for my taste. Um, so I hope we get to see more of that in later installments. Also, there was one other POV character named Pharaoh, and she felt very flat. I know that this is a criticism that has been addressed by Joe Abercrombie himself, and that he said that he would write her differently if he could do it again. But that doesn't mean I can't dislike the way it is being done in here, and I can't comment on it because that's the experience that I had. Um, so yeah, it wasn't a perfect book, but I really enjoyed it. The writing style is gorgeous, as everyone keeps saying. There were these certain sort of phrases that came back in multiple places, um, that sort of got a different meaning in a different context, which I is something I really like, when authors do that. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. It took me a little while to get into it, but at the end, I really liked it, and I do recommend this book. Next up, I have Where Shadows Lie by Allegra Pescatore. This is an indie fantasy, um, about a princess, in this kingdom, and her brother, um, who was the heir to the throne, has joined a rebellion, um, and have tried to kill their parents, which failed. The brother died, and so it's no longer safe for her in the palace. But the people bringing her away were also actually part of the rebellion, and so they bring her to like the headquarters there. Um, so yeah, I really liked it. It's I don't really know where to start talking about this book. So let's just start at the beginning. The opening line was amazing. Um, had a great opening line. Um, Also, the pacing picks up right from the beginning. It's we're going, and we keep going. There's a little bit of a slump, through the middle where it could have been tightened up, but yeah, it was quite the page turner, um, in a lot of places. Um, there is a sort of three main plot threads. My favorite out of those three plot lines were the one that were in Eleanor and Gabriel's POV. Eleanor is the princess, by the way. As I already said earlier in this video, I love court intrigue. I love stories set at court. I really liked how realistic Eleanor was. Well, it was a little annoying at times. I think her reactions to situations were very realistic, and how a person would really react in such situations. Um, Eleanor's mother is a very intriguing character, and I want to learn more about her in the rest of the series, um, because I'm curious about her. Then my next favorite plotline was demons. I liked that we learned, a lot about the gods. We get to hang out with the gods, in his plotline, which is fun. We also learn about rifting, which is sort of the first magic system, in here. Um, and the way the magic system was explained is a little weird, because we get a lot of information on how it works and the limitations and stuff, but we don't really know what it does. It's sort of like you have never seen a car and you ask someone, hey, what's a car? And they start talking about like different types of engines, and then certain parts of the car, and what they do, but they never tell you, hey, it's a thing that you can drive in it and go to places with it. Like that's how it felt. Um, so that was a little odd. So I hope that we get more of that in the rest of the series, because I would like to learn more what the magic does. I also like Demon's POV because through him we get to see things that we wouldn't be able to see in other POVs, which makes the intrigue even juicier than if we wouldn't know these things. So yeah, I really liked it. Um, then we had Faye and Frederick, and their plot line wasn't that interesting to me, but I like their chapters for the world building that we got in them. We got a lot of history. We got to learn about gifts, which is the other magic system in here. There were also appendices that talked more about the spirits and the gifts, which were also really fun. Also, we have a different culture in their plot line, where we talk or we explore the morality of slavery, and because it is a slave society, but in an interesting way, in a way that don't I haven't never really seen it done. So that was interesting. Their POVs had a lot of info dumps because they're learning from this other culture who knows these things, and they're just like, oh my god, you guys are stupid, why don't you know this? And I start explaining stuff to them. So there were technically info dumps, but I thought they were done really well. And didn't really always feel like an info dump. They felt like a natural part of the story, which I really liked. So yeah, I really liked it. I liked the ending. It was actually very interesting because I thought that where it ends now, that in a lot of series that would be the end of the series. But now that's the end of the first book, and then the second book is gonna go on from there. So that'll be very interesting to see. So yeah, I'm really excited. I really need to read the sequels. I did receive a review copy for this book, so thank you to the author, and sorry that it took me so long. Um, but that doesn't influence my opinions. I so just a little disclaimer there. Then I have Daughter of the Empire by Raymond E. Feist and Janie Wirtz. The first book in the Empires trilogy. I really enjoyed this. I really liked the political intrigue. I really liked Mara as a main character. If you don't know what this book is about, we follow a main character called Mara, who at the beginning of the book is about to become a priestess to some goddess. But minutes before she officially becomes a priestess, the ceremony is stopped because her entire family has been murdered, and now she is the head of her house, and she has to go to this estate to run her house and her stuff. And so we have a lot of intrigue because her family didn't just drop dead. They were murdered by someone, by one of the other houses. So we get a rivalry between them. We get Mara has to try to get back on her feet after this because her house is weakened a lot. And there's the game of the council, where everyone is trying to become more powerful and gain honor and stuff like that. And so Mara has to use her wits to do that, and I really liked it. I like how intelligent Mara is, and how calculated. I like the intrigue. I love Keoki and Papewayo. They're great characters. I love them so much. Yeah, I really liked his. I like sort of the sacrifices that Mara has to make. We have Bunto Kapi, who was a nice antagonist. Like I don't know that I would call him the villain of the book, but he was definitely an antagonist. Um, And I like that they didn't make him completely incompetent, because that would have been so easy to do. Um, Also, we get some compassion with him, um, which I liked by the end. Um, so yeah, I just overall really enjoyed this book. I gave it 5 stars. It was great. I read this for a read along um, over at Alan's channel, the Library of Alexandria. Um, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. I really, really enjoyed this book, and I recommend this one. In the meantime, I've also read the second book, which I don't like as much, so I don't know that I would recommend the entire series. But book 1 is fun, so yeah. And then finally, my favorite book of the month is actually the one that I read in July. It was a novella called Medusa by Jessie Barton. I have been struggling with Greek myth retellings because I really want to like the genre and I want to find the one that I give 5 stars, but I was never able to find the one for me. And then I was over at a friend's house, and as one does, I took a look at our bookshelves, and she pulled it off and she says, "Here, borrow it, read it right now." And so I listened to her advice, and I'm so glad that I did because I love this so much. I think that the balance between following the original myth and changing it was hit perfectly. Um, there are a lot of moments that get extra meaning and extra layers if you know the story, um, or if you know mythology in general. Um, but I don't think they took away if from the story if you didn't know the original myth, which is my problem that some retellings have, that they're too like wink wink, and then if you don't know the story, then or if you don't know the references, then you just miss a lot, and the story isn't that interesting anymore. So I think that everyone could enjoy Medusa. A big theme in this one was loneliness. Medusa's loneliness until Perseus arrives at our island. Um, and then I liked how she really lashed on to this other person that talked to her because she's been so lonely and she wants the human connection. And then the betrayal that she feels when she learns the reason that Perseus came to her island is just so heartbreaking. And I loved the ending, and oh, it was so good. I was really, really blown away by this book. It gave me hope back in Greek myth retellings, so that's good. And I really need to read more Jessie Burton, because I really liked the writing style in this, and just the overall craft was great, and the story was great, and the characters were great, and it was the perfect length. Like it was a great novella. Um, while I wouldn't have minded more, I think just it's perfect. This book is pretty much perfect for me. I really loved it. I highly, highly recommend. And it's my book of the month. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. So that was a wrap up. It was a bit of a challenge to film this one because I'm filming this at the end of November. Um, so it's been a while. I didn't always remember my thoughts about these books. So I hope it wasn't too bad. Um, but yeah, it was a great month. Um, I I I really liked most of these books. Um, I really liked all the ones that I finished. So yeah, if you've read any of these books, let me know what you thought of them. Um, and Tell me what your favorite book was that you read in August. And I will see you again in another video. Bye.